Welcome to Brain Wellness, the podcast. I'm your host, Mandy NP. Each episode will bring you a new topic or interview related to brain health and wellness as part of my mission to help you on the path to a healthier, happier brain. So, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. My guest today is Shaye Woodward. Shaye is a relationship specialist and master certified coach dedicated to assisting couples and individuals navigating the unique challenges associated with ADHD. Drawing from personal experiences dealing with ADHD, experience of coaching for the last 5+ years, and a BA in psychology, Shaye has become an advocate for transforming ADHD struggles into strengths. She has co-authored a self-improvement book, Winning the Human Race, with her husband that helps others begin their journey to who they want to become. Thank you so much for joining me today, Shaye.
Thank you so much, Mandy. I am so excited about doing this with you.
Yeah, we were connecting before we hit record, and I always love that finding the little aha moments and the things that we have in common. So we'll see if that comes up today as well. But my first question is always to get a little backstory. So tell me about you. How did you get to where you are now?
Well, it started a long, long time ago, like when I was little. I just knew that I was different. And I think a lot of us don't realize that that difference is okay because we're always told, why can't you do it like so and so? Or why can't you be as good as? Or what's wrong with you? Because you're thinking different or processing things differently. And so growing up, I always felt like the odd man out. Never fit into this group or that group. I kind of just floated, right? And then I didn't really know what ADHD was other than that's the troublemakers, that's the bad kids, the labels and all of that that went along with it and the stigma. So my parents refused to get us tested, which I understand now as an adult looking back. They didn't want us to have the label. And so when I found out I was actually an adult, which we're finding more and more women are being diagnosed as adults. And when I went through a car accident about almost 4 years ago, uh, it like tripled, 10 times it, made it super, super worse. And that's when I really stepped into it fully. Before I was looking at it because I have kids that have ADHD and I wanted to understand it because I felt like we were always button heads and battling and why isn't he doing this? Why isn't she doing this? And that kind of aspect. And then I realized it's not that there's something wrong with them or that they weren't doing it to purposely not get something done. There was something that just wasn't connecting. And then when I had the accident, I had to relearn everything as far as understanding my own processes because what I was doing before doesn't work now. And so that's when I stepped into it fully. And because I love coaching, because I have that passion to work with people and help them not feel broken, not feel like there's something wrong with them, that's what really pulled me into really focusing in this area and getting out of that stigma. I'm just tired of people feeling like they can't do something different and be stuck. So that's where it all came to.
Yeah, and that's where we were connecting before we hit record. It was the whole ADHD after head injury and everything. And it's fascinating to hear others who've gone through a similar situation because my ADHD definitely was heightened after the accident as well. Do you see that much in your coaching? Have you noticed it at all?
You mean that it's heightened or that it's from a
Yeah,
car accident or something like that?
yeah.
A lot of it I've noticed with my clients so far has been I didn't realize it
Mm.
until I was older, or my child was diagnosed with it. And I thought, well, look at all the symptoms they're having. Maybe I have it too. And so they start looking at that aspect too. And so that's where a lot of my clients have come figuring it out. And there's been some of my clients that didn't even think that they had ADHD. And as we're talking, I'm not a clinician, so I don't diagnose them, but I do say there's a lot of characteristics that we're seeing here. It is possible. Maybe you want to consider this. And then I tell them, if you really don't want to go get diagnosed, that's okay. Treat it like you do. Use the things because the symptoms are the same. Use the tools that work for you, and let's figure out your processing. So a lot of it is based upon like seeing somewhere outside of them, or they've gone through a lot of anxiety or a lot of depression, and they're like, we don't know where it's coming from. And when they finally dive into it a little bit deeper, instead of stopping at, oh, they're very, they've got anxiety, they look behind that anxiety, they're finding out that they're having the ADHD. So it's kind of fascinating. I kind of geek out on it a little bit.
And I think it's hard not to. But yeah,
Right,
when so often I think we see all those other mental health conditions along with it, such as anxiety and depression.
right,
And sometimes I kind of wonder, is it the chicken or the egg, which one came first? But they
right.
definitely play off each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially if you're thinking like there's something wrong with me, every time something comes up that can reinforce it in a negative or positive, we lean towards that negative. We lean towards it's got to be me. And we don't even realize that it's just, hey, maybe you just need to connect A to B and understand that you're going to take the road trip that's going to go up and down the mountains and all over the place instead of that freeway that goes straight there. It's just an easy way to put it.
Yeah, that makes me think, if you ever seen those memes where they have the conversation with somebody that has ADHD, where somebody without ADHD, you ask a question, you get an answer, and somebody with ADHD, you get all these little side conversations and everything
Yeah.
else to go along with it.
Yeah, in fact, my husband even says that to me. He'll ask me a question and I'll start telling him, and he's like, honey, I don't need to know the detail. I just need an answer. And I'm like, what was the question?
Yep, yep,
That's the
it
reality,
happens.
right?
It happens. Yeah, yep. So most of what you work with your clients is women, right?
Right
Female.
now, currently, yes.
Yeah,
My goal is to move into also helping teens and teachers and parents collectively and helping them to be able to understand their student or understand their child, because I think a lot of that there's a disconnect between understanding the symptoms and the person. So when we talk about ADHD and someone says, "Oh, I have ADHD." Okay, you have the characteristics, but you are not your diagnosis. You have the characteristics of ADHD, but you are totally a different person. Who are you? You know? And so that's kind of where my passion comes in. But I love working with women and watching a light bulb turn on, you know? Oh,
yeah,
I am normal in
yeah,
my own way, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. I love that you specified that person with thing. I remember that in nursing school way back, they were teaching us not to call somebody by their diagnosis, but the person with this diagnosis,
Mhm.
because we shouldn't identify as the diagnosis. We are a person first and foremost. We have this diagnosis, so we can have that.
Right,
We can learn to work with it within the idea that we are a being by ourselves.
right, right. And once you step out of that identity of I am this diagnosis, there's like a whole new world that opens up. And you start accepting who you are as who you are with these funny quirks or these moments of stress or these moments of pain that you can actually address it, touch it, deal with it, and move forward.
Mhm. Mhm. So along that line, so you're finding these aha moments with these women. Do you know or do you understand that if there a difference between how men and women like demonstrate ADHD or deal with it?
Yeah, that one is a very interesting one because we have a blended family of nine. So there's seven boys and two girls. Not all of them have been diagnosed with ADHD because they're kind of like, well, if you guys have it and I'm exhibiting the same thing, there's no reason to go look for, a diagnosis. But they all have varying degrees in some aspects of it. And so it's interesting watching the boys and the girls versus, on how they're exhibiting it. The boys, this is fascinating to me. The boys exhibit it in a more physical nature, like sitting there bouncing or their legs moving or they pace. Like I had one of my stepsons who paced. And when we first got married, I'm like, does he not like me? Is he annoyed? Is he impatient? What's going on? And my husband's like, he's just thinking. That's just how he thinks. Oh, okay. For the girls, it's more internal and that's why we're not diagnosed till around puberty on up. Even women in their 60s are being diagnosed with ADHD. And then as soon as they get that diagnosis, they look back and they're like, holy cow, my whole life makes sense. But we exhibit it more in the internal through the anxiety, through the depression, through the second guessing of everything. Did I make the right decision? Oh my gosh, is that the right thing? Holy cow, did I, I'm running through those things. So there's a lot of differences and similarities with it. Girls just don't exhibit it naturally all the time in a physical way. So it's harder to diagnose, I think, because we're so focused that when you think ADHD, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is hyperactivity. And so they think, oh, well, they're not bouncing off the walls. So why would you think they have ADHD?
I was just going to ask, is that why women don't get diagnosed right away? Because it does look different.
Mhm.
And we were kind of talking beforehand too. Does it feel different before and after an injury or after an illness or anything else in life that can cause more stress?
I think before my accident, I only really exhibited the signs of ADHD when I was super stressed. Because I think what happens is we get to that super stress mode and we're out of control. We don't have the capability of stepping into that control or stepping into that thing. And so when things get out of control, we almost feel like this inside physically, right? But we can't figure out how to exhibit it outside. And for me to be able to control that feeling, I did a lot of running. I did a lot of exercise. I did physical things to burn off that internal. But I didn't sit there and bounce my leg or get too fidgety, or, I do have some of the fidgetiness, but not to the extreme that somebody would say you're hyperactive, you need to be diagnosed. The other aspect to it also is looking at the fact that when you have a head injury, it it changes the processing ability. It's not so much that I mean, your ADHD gets worse because what is ADHD? It's part of a processing issue, right? So if your processing issues get interrupted by a head injury, well, now you've compounded it. And so, as we were mentioning earlier, you know, I had a hard time hearing right after the accident. And I was talking to my eye doctor because I had vision issues also. And he's like, "Oh, you're not losing your hearing. It's just the nerve and the processing and all of that is kind of squampus right now." And I was like, "Fabulous," because after a certain point, you're just like, "Wonderful, one more thing to deal with," you know? And so when I heard that, I was like, "Okay, good. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not broken. The car accident didn't cause me to go deaf, anything like that." But now I'm telling everybody, okay, if I say it twice, what? Just pause for a second to let my brain catch up to your words coming in, and then I'll reply. And that's made a huge difference as far as like my family members, my friends, people that I'm around, that they aren't getting irritated because they have to repeat everything.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's what I learned with that processing issue.
Yeah. And so that can definitely be an issue with head injury, as we've talked about, but just ADHD alone. So even
Yeah.
not having, because it is a sensory thing. It's
Mhm.
you're sensing things differently. So just having that ADHD, we always talk about how it's difficulty focusing, difficulty concentrating,
Right.
difficulty maintaining that thought process. So you might have to hear things twice, even if you didn't have a head injury.
Right. Right. Exactly. Which makes sense when you look back at your kids, especially if your kids are ADHD, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I had to repeat that to you 5 times." Maybe I didn't need to. Maybe I just needed to pause for a second and be like, "Did you catch it? Is
Mhm.
it there yet? Okay,
Mhm.
great."
Yeah, yeah. So there are so many jokes about ADHD, and people will kind of
Yeah.
joke that we have tendencies, but why is it really important for us to understand the magnitude of the kind of the title and the idea itself of ADHD?
I think the biggest part is that when we see it's just all jokes, then we think, "Oh, ADHD is a joke. It's no big deal. You should be able to do just like I do. Ha ha ha." And I really didn't see how much it can impact someone with all the jokes until I sat down with my son last year. We were shopping for Christmas and he said, "Hey, let's go get some lunch." And he told me that he had just been diagnosed with ADHD by his therapist and he started crying. And he's like, almost 30 or maybe he is 30. I lose track of their ages. But I'm sitting there thinking, "Okay, why are you so upset about the jokes and the memes and things like that?" And he said, "Because mom, those jokes hurt. I'm so frustrated right now because I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's going on. I don't know, and all of these things." And he said, "There's a dark side to it." And I got thinking about it after our conversation and I realized we focus so much on the funny in the social media and the jokes about it, which okay, that's fine, but we're not putting the attention on the other side of it. And we do see the dark side too. There's a lot of that in social media, all the things that are wrong with you with ADHD and all of that. But the other side of it too is, where is the solutions? How do I do this? What can I do? Give me a tool. I need the skill. And it's lacking. It's very much lacking. We already know all of this over here. Who's going to come over here and do this? And that's when I'm like, okay, enough is enough. I'm tired of watching too many people try to just white knuckle it, get through and start having tools for them to put in their tool belt to be able to say, okay, when I'm doing this, that's my awareness of, okay, now I need to pull this tool out and I need to implement it. And to know when to shut down because we overstimulate ourselves so much just in general. I mean, go to the store. How much overstimulation is that for you? For me, right? And then we're throwing people that have sensory issues into it. The noise of the music, the noise of the people, the baby's crying, the kids throwing a temper tantrum. It's too much. Going to the stores is one of the worst things for me every week. It literally is. Half the time I send my husband and say, here's the bill or here's the list. Please go. And it's exhausting,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I
So,
love that you can do the pickup at Target and stuff now that I don't even have to go
yeah,
into the store. I order online and pick it up because thank God for COVID for that because
right.
I don't like going to the stores anymore for the same reason.
No, it's just too much stimulus. I don't even go to church most Sundays because it's too much stimulus. And it's not that I don't want to go and be with my community. It's the lights are too bright for too long. Kids are crying, There's a lot of just undercurrent noise and it's very distracting. And so your focus is like trying to listen to the speaker, but it's not working. I have no idea what they're talking about,
Yeah.
and you miss out on it anyway.
Yeah.
And for me, that causes migraines. So I will avoid that as much as I possibly can, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So there's so many different things that we could talk about. I'm trying.
I
Goodness.
know it's like taking a whole tornado and going here, put it into a little
I
raindrop.
know. I keep getting this thought. I'm like, oh, I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that. And I'm trying to like rein it in and take
We'll
one
have
little
to
bit at
do
a time.
series.
I know. So we've talked about how things can be different, how they're the same. Like there are these little things that people can say, yeah, I have these tendencies for ADHD. Are there
Right.
any things that pop up as you're coaching people that you hear over and over and over again that people might not be aware of?
That is a great question. I think a lot of it is they just don't have awareness to begin with.
Mm,
Like they just are not aware of why they feel so tired or why they feel so stressed or why they feel like they're just ready to scream and yell. That emotions are going all over the place and they can't regulate them and they don't understand.
mhm,
And a big part of it is the awareness itself. So I'd say that's probably across the board with all my clients. There's just a very low awareness of what is actually helping or triggering or just, having a thought of being like, okay, so if this is equaling this, then this part in here I can eliminate or maybe decrease so that I don't have that same outcome each time. So that I think is the biggest part I'm noticing with throughout all my clients, with the women that I deal with, and even with some of the younger men, they just don't have that awareness yet.
mhm. How do you work on that?
Getting that awareness?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's a fun one. Uh, First I just sit down with them and I'm like, okay, what are you feeling? What's going on? Okay. And a lot of times it comes out in the to do things. I can't get there on time. My time management is terrible. I don't make the deadlines. My house is all cluttered. I've got piles everywhere. Okay. How come? Well, because I look at it and then I just and they don't even have the words, right? They just have the emotion. It's kind of like they're going back to when they were 1 and 2 years old and what's wrong? I feel better. They don't have any words. It's just emotion. And so then I start asking questions. So when you walk into the room and you see this pile, what's the feeling? Well, I feel like tense, stress. I said, okay. So then what do you do? Well, then I start thinking about this is just too much. Oh, because why? Well, it's going to take hours to do it. Oh, okay. Well, what if you didn't take hours? What if you just took 10 minutes and took one spot? And it's like a light bulb goes on that they never thought of it. And honestly, they never have because that awareness is, I have to do it all in that all or nothing.
Hmm.
And so that's just one thing, that I can think of at the moment that I've worked with. And then the body doubling. How many times does it seem easier when somebody else is around? The other person could be doing absolutely nothing to help you, but it's easier to do it because they're just there,
Yeah.
So there's a lot of tools and tips, but it's bringing that awareness up first. And then sometimes it's actually making that connection of, yeah, I understand. Or I'll say, are you a Roomba or a Hoover? This is just one of them. And they look at me like I'm off my rocker, which, okay, if that question was asked, I could see that. And they just say, what does that mean? I said, well, you know what a Roomba does, right? Well, yeah, it goes and cleans the floor. I said, yeah, but it goes and it bounces off of something and then goes somewhere else and bounces and goes back. A Hoover, you have a hold of it and it's just a straight line, right? Well, what kind of day do you have? Do you start in the kitchen and you look around and you're like, oh, I got to get the dishes done. Oh, wait, I need to get that dish out of the bedroom that I had. Go get that. Oh, there's laundry on the floor. I need to pick the laundry up and put it in the basket. Oh, wait, the basket's full. I need to take it over to the laundry room. Oh, shoot, I forgot to move the laundry. I got to restart that load. Oh, wait, there's tea towels. Oh, I was in the kitchen doing the dishes. That's a Roomba, right? And that's very common. And I'm sure you're sitting there going, oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm a Roomba.
It's a
Yeah.
nicer way of putting it than
Yeah.
saying, I am so disorganized,
Yeah. I
right?
usually call my cleaning days my ADHD cleaning days because I will do the exact same thing. I'll start one thing and go to put something away and find that I have to do something else in the other room.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But
Eventually things get done.
yeah, but we're effective that way because our brain will switch really quick as long as we can remember to go back around that same circle.
That's the trick after the brain injury. The remembering
Yeah.
part. Yeah.
Yeah. So we figure out, how do you remember things? What do you do? So a lot of it's just working with each person because not every ADHD is the same.
Mhm.
And that's a huge assumption out there. Your ADHD is the same as mine, so you should try this or do it this way or whatever they may say. But reality is yours is different than mine. And we have to figure out what your process is versus what my process is that works.
Mhm. Yeah, before we hit record, I said that I've got a house full of ADHD, and plus my youngest has autism as well. And um, made the greatest statement one time. He said, "You know, Mom, just because you've met one person with autism doesn't mean you understand what autism is." Like that's
Ooh, I
exactly
love
on.
that.
Because just seeing one does not mean you know what all of them are like. And that's the same thing with
Right.
ADHD. Because as I watch everybody in the house with the diagnosis, everybody's different.
Right. Well, and like I said, we have a blended family of
Yeah.
9 kids. And when they're all together, oh my goodness, the decibels are extremely loud. But not only is that the case, we also have every one of them are different.
Yeah.
Like I said, one paces, one has to stand and rock like this. And of course, I can't watch them for very long because it makes me want to chuck. So, they have their different ways of coping.
Mhm.
You can't assume it's one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a great statement. I love
Right?
that.
And he's 12. That was even before he turned 12. I couldn't believe how astute
What a
that was.
wise
I'm like,
soul.
okay. Hmm. Crazy kids. If somebody's wondering if they have ADHD, what's
Mhm.
like one or two things that they could do right now to get things in order or get or kind of identify where they're at?
Well, if you're not diagnosed, but you think you are, you may want to talk to a doctor or a therapist and get a diagnosis if you feel you need it. But if you don't feel like you need that, just start looking at some of the tools that other people are using and try it. A lot of this is trial and error. And that's the best way to find things because like I like chocolate cake, but the other person beside me may not. They may like vanilla cake. So if you're looking at what can I do for tools, I would say first of all, decide that you're going to deal with it. Okay. Second of all, find a coach. Don't do it the hard way. I mean, we all struggled The coaches that are out there for ADHD are there to help you. They're there to give you the tools. They're not there to beat you up. They're not there to take you through all the pain in the past. They're only there to say, okay, you had pain in your past. What do you want to do to change it? Let's move you forward. What works for you now? What's not working for you now? Okay, here's a new tool. Strap on your tool belt. Let's get those tools going in there. Because it doesn't matter if you're diagnosed or not. If you feel like you're dealing with it, then deal with it. But get somebody to help you. It's not easy. I mean, that's just bottom line. It's not easy. So go to a coach that actually can help you.
Hmm. Hmm. Good words. As a coach, do you have any projects coming up or anything you wanted to share with our listeners?
Ooh, projects. That's a loaded word for an ADHD person too. Which project would you like out of the 1,562? No, I actually do. I'm creating a page. It's going to say Sock It to ADHD. So you can look on Facebook for that. I'm hopefully getting that implemented within the next week. And there is, I'm working towards getting more stages and talking more to people to be able to just kind of get out there. And the easiest way to find me is on any of the social medias. But the biggest project that I'm looking forward to is partnering with a new company that's out there. They've been out there for about 6 months to a year, and they are focused on getting ADHD awareness going out there. So as soon as I get that information for sure, that'll be on that page. But yeah, those projects, I've got projects all over the house. I mean, you can see one right there in the corner. That's a project of mine, of the bunnies. I make those. And so
These are
I
cute.
implement that into it too for some of my clients that need something soft. Like you were talking about your son's autistic. I've
Yeah.
got clients that have autistic children that they have that texture
Hmm.
that they need something super soft. So they'll get those. But yeah, those are some of the projects I've got going on. And I know I sound really squirrely with it, but that's because I bounce through a lot of projects, as
Hmm.
I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, we may or may not have several projects that are in the works at our house at any given
But it
time as
makes
well.
it fun. It makes
Yeah.
it fun. You can bounce from thing to thing and be productive for 10 minutes. It's great.
Do you have any favorite things to talk about with your ADHD people?
I would have to say my favorite thing is just telling them the fun that they can have in it. And they kind of look at me like I'm off the wall because they're dealing with a lot of the anxiety side, the depression side, all of the things that pull them down. And I say, "What fun do you do?" "Well, I do this and this and this and this." "Okay." And they say, "Shay, what fun do you have?" I said, "I know this sounds really dumb, but I put little sock reels on Instagram, cartoon socks on the Instagram. Every day I wear them. And it may be a few here and a few there, but it's fun for me because I love cartoons, as I'm sure a lot of ADHD people do. We resonate with a lot of the silliness, but we hide it. And that's the part that I want them to open up. Because when you start opening up and you start playing,
Mhm.
what does that do? It brings almost a sense of, can now be a kid. It's great.
Mhm.
Right. And so I help. That's the thing I try to talk more into them is just let's bring some of that fun back. Let's bring some of those smiles, those giggles. So you're 50 years old and you're out in the middle of the yard doing cartwheels. Who cares? Right. I mean, people give me a hard time all the time because I'm 53. They're like, why are you putting me into a box? Right. If I want to go run in the yard with my grandkids, I'm going to go run in the yard with my grandkids. So
Mhm.
that's the thing I love to talk to him about the most. It's just bringing some of that fun back into the ADHD instead of always looking at it as a problem.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I was gonna say on your website, I was checking that out a little bit before we started the show today too. And you do like talk about how to find the fun and find the usefulness of ADHD because it doesn't always have to be a negative thing. You can be very useful with that diagnosis.
Oh,
So it's just
absolutely.
finding that.
It's
Yeah.
finding the way you make it work.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to be real, a lot of the entrepreneurs out there, a
Mm.
lot of the very successful entrepreneurs are ADHD. And that was a gift to them. And I want people to understand your ADHD is not a problem. It's
Mhm.
only a problem if you look at it as a problem instead of turning it and saying, what gift is this giving me?
Mhm.
What gift am I able to bless others with and myself? If I'm 53 and can go play as a kid, I think that's a gift, right?
Yeah.
And it can resonate with others. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And we take ourselves way too seriously on a day-to-day basis.
Amen.
Like I
Amen.
went for a run with my kids last week and we were skipping and jumping and singing at the top of our lungs and my kids were laughing at me. I'm like, what? Age is just a number. You got to have fun with it.
Yeah. And when you throw a little bit of fun, how much better do you feel that day?
Hmm. Even the run went better. We went, I
Right?
forget, a couple miles, but the kids loved it. I did
Right.
too. It was a blast.
It is. And you forget how old you are because you're right, it is a number. The only reason why I say how old I am is because people are like, don't ask me how old I am. And I think, wow, you really need to lighten up a little bit. It's okay.
It's a badge of honor. We've made it this far.
Yes.
Come on.
These gray hairs are from wisdom.
Mhm.
I'm gonna keep them.
And for the sake of time being wise, I'm sure we can go on and on. But is there anything else any last things you want to share with our listeners before we wrap up for today?
Remember, you're not broken. This is not something that is gonna knock you down. Don't listen to the chatter. Don't listen to the noise of what everybody else says. Start listening to your internal guide because that ADHD is a gift inside of you. Don't forget that. Even in the moments of the hardship, it's still a gift. So let's find what gift you can bless not only everyone else around you, but yourself. And then put a smile on your face, eat an orange wedge, and just take a picture.
Even better if it's covered in chocolate. Yeah.
That's right.
Awesome. Great words to end on. Thank you so much for being here today, Shay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to subscribe, like, and share this with others to help me continue on with my mission to help people live healthier, happier lives. Go to www.brainwellnesssolutions.com to see what I'm up to and get links to all the social medias there. See you next time.